we get going? I'd like to welcome everyone to this virtual forum that we're holding, the purpose of which is to describe and answer questions on the two town meeting articles coming up at the special town meeting next week, and also to answer any questions that may be related, or to the extent that you have unrelated questions, we'd like to stay as focused as possible on the town meeting articles, but understanding that this is a pretty comprehensive project and fairly important to the town, we're not going to dismiss any questions just because they're not specifically on topic. My name is TJ Recupero. I'm on the school building committee. There are a number of school building committee members who are in attendance tonight. I'm not going to list them up because then I have to go down the list of attendees and that will take too long. But with us from the project team are representatives of Vertex, Tim Bonfatti, Eric Rubin, and Brian Kelly. Also from Drummy Rosa and Anna, DRA Architects, is Carl Franceschi, and I saw Courtney Southwick also, I think, logged in. And I think that's all we have. Someone has somebody else who I've missed, please speak up. This meeting, I think, will be broadcast at a later date on SMEC, but it was primarily intended for town meeting members, although nobody was precluded from attending and listening in and asking questions. At the end of what I think will be a pretty brief presentation, we'll open it up to questions. If you do have questions, at the top of your screen, you'll see a hand and the word raise underneath it. You click that and Eric Rubin will recognize you in turn for, hopefully, questions will take no more than a few minutes each, so that if we have a number of people asking questions, we can rattle through them and stick to a hard out at an hour. Having said that, Eric, why don't you take over and discuss the first slide, which I think is scheduled.
Thanks, TJ. All right, so here we are, if you guys can see my screen, in the project design phase. So this past April, in February, we had a town meeting followed by a debt exclusion vote, successful, which kicked us off into the design development phase of the project. This spring and summer, the project team has been working through the design development for all aspects of the project. We came with a final DD cost estimate package in August, and we are wrapping up the formal MSBA submittal, which is targeted to be sent in at the end of the month. The upcoming town meeting vote in next week is critical for our schedule and advancing with the construction document phase of the project. As you can see up on the screen, January of 2026, we're targeting for our 60% CD construction document submittal, followed by the 90% in April. And then we're looking to kick off with a construction phase next June. That will bring us to a summer 2028 completion and a fall of 2028 building occupancy. So for opening of the new school. TJ, I'll kick it back to you.
Great. So the purpose of next week's town meeting is, it's a special town meeting for many issues, of course, but the purpose of it for our purposes, there are two articles. I think it's Articles 12 and 13. One is the conveyance of town land, and the other is the acquisition of private land from an abutter. The abutter is the owner of Fano Drive and surrounding parcels. Fano Drive, if you look at the schematic on your screen, is the paper street that some of you may know, some of you older town residents may know as Line Lumber Road. You can identify it if you're going down Park Street. There's a billboard, and then there's also on the right-hand side going towards Brockton, going south on Route 27. there's a billboard and then there's a sign that says Precision Door and Window. And in between those two signs, there's a gate and a paper street. It's an undeveloped roadway that was permitted as a subdivision road back in the, I want to say the late 80s, if I remember correctly. And it was named Fano Drive, as the family who owned the land was named Stefano, that many of you may know. So Fano comes from De Stefano. Fano Drive is privately owned, so we don't otherwise have any rights to use that except by grant of the owners. So we had talked with the owners of Fano Drive prior to the first vote. Actually, going back 2 summers ago, we started talking with the Stefano family. Very cooperative people, very nice people, very willing to reach an agreement. Their primary interest was in acquiring either funds or land, and the building committee doesn't have the capacity to do that. We don't have either funds or land to give, so that required some action on behalf of the town, and we were under a very stringent time schedule at that point in time. And as a matter of fact, at every point in time since then, that we had to submit our plans as they were at that time, and that's what you see before you. Approximately, they've changed in minor ways since then. But if you look at the schematic, you'll see an entrance that is internal to the land, connecting to Park Street. That connects on a 50-foot wide connection or 50 feet of frontage on Park Street. Then it expands outward to a parcel that I think is like 28 acres, if I'm correct. So that's fine. We can do that. And, we have a good plan that works. But you'll see one of the obstacles we contended with is this spur, this long stretch of roadway that extends to the Haynes Road neighborhood to the north on your screen. That's for emergency access. That's a roadway that would only be used for emergency access, and we'd have to pave it. We'd have to, of course, clear it, build it out, and I think most importantly, that would require 2 bridges crossing over wetlands to the property, one at Haynes Road and a second one, actually the primary one would be at the Park Street end, and then a second one at Haynes Road. 2 bridges can be expensive, but having an emergency access was important to the fire department, to the schools, and of course the building committee also. So that was our only option given the limited access that the site has. Fano Drive would allow us at least a little flexibility to investigate the other end of Fano, which connects to Sumner Ave or Sumner Street. Well, we know that. Yeah. It's about, I want to say, like a half mile long, if I'm correct. That's about that. So we investigated that. We actually had a deal in place at one point. It wasn't a great deal for either us or the landowners, and it would have required too much time-wise for us to put together, so we had to put it aside. And I want to skip ahead. I don't want to take too long giving the backdrop to this, but right after this last vote in June, the town manager contacted the school building committee. We had it wasn't a formal meeting, it was more of a drop-in meeting where he sat down and said, okay, this has been passed. How do we make this a successful project? And one of the things that we pointed out to him, among several, was that it would be great if we could investigate Fano Drive again. But at that time, and still to this day, we had very little time to do it. So to his credit and to Mark Tisdale's credit, they met with the Stefano family, and within about 2 weeks, they were able to have a deal in place. And the deal is that, I want to make sure I don't get off the slide before we move on. So just last word on this. The plan itself eliminates, this will be shown in a later slide, eliminates that secondary emergency access way to Haynes Road primarily. Everything else stays substantially the same, but you'll see later on how the roadway, the ring road around the school, and the geometry of the roadway was able to be changed a bit, I think more efficiently, and it's a better project altogether. So moving forward, Eric, if you can flip to the next slide. And this is the plan that I just described. It's a more compact roadway system, still retains the ring road. Actually, Carl, if you're there, could you highlight some of the changes, or Courtney, just quickly? I don't want to ham-hand anything or be ham-handed with anything on describing the site. Just fill in the blanks that I left, which were abundant.
Sure, TJ. This is Carl Franceschi with DRA. As TJ mentioned, the building itself and the immediate adjacencies, the parking lot and playgrounds, remain the same from the schematic design that was approved by the town and the building committee and the state. What's changed is the access to those resources and a much cleaner intersection at Park Street, which utilizes the existing right-of-way. It will widen it. It will make it safer and obviously accommodate the traffic in and out of the site with a sidewalk, as well as proper turning radiuses and left turn and right turn exiting lanes onto Park Street to make it as safe as possible. But it still gives dedicated access to cars. That's the first driveway as you come down Fano Drive. The parents dropping off students will turn right at that first driveway connection there, circle around and to the front of the school, just like they did previously, and then back out to Fano and to Park Street. Buses will continue on down Fano. They have that dedicated loop that you can see there with the yellow line. That's where the buses can have dedicated pickup and storage drop-off area there along Fano. Again, dropping off students at the front door. And then there's a third connection further down Fano around the back of the school that is for both service vehicles to access the loading dock and the kitchen and so forth. And it also can be used as a dedicated drop-off for kindergartners and their wing of the building at the top of the plan there. So, and again, that's how it was planned originally in schematics. It's just a much cleaner traffic flow now by rearranging those connections to Fano Drive and Park Street. But the playing fields, the parking lot, the playgrounds all remain the same as approved by the state. We obviously gain the flexibility and the addition of a emergency way out of the site now by continuing down Fano towards Sumner, so we could eliminate that long, expensive emergency access drive to Haynes Road and the bridges and the wetland crossings that went with it. So in both places now, where Fano Drive comes in and where the emergency drive used to go out, we no longer need wetlands crossings and bridges there. So it's a great advantage to the site, to the budget, and ultimately to the town, because this plan, even though the project right now is proposed, is the development of Fano Drive to serve just the school in sort of a master planning way. The town has the ability in the future to still develop Fano as a fully, developed public street connecting from Park Street to Sumner at some future date. That's not necessarily part of this appropriation, but it gives the town that flexibility. So those are the changes, TJ. Thanks.
Thank you, Carl. Stick on this for 1 sec. I just wanted to point something out that I noticed as I'm looking at this this plan here. One of the things you'll notice is we're keeping as much of the natural vegetation as possible. You'll see clumps of trees in between the roadway system and around. We're taking great pains to maintain that small school. South School was always called the school in the woods. taking great pains to maintain that sort of, I want a good adjective, Carl, but I want to say very, the school in the woods theme to it, I think is what we're going for. But, and that really shows up on this plan right here.
Mm-hmm.
If you could skip down one. So this relates specifically to the articles before town meeting. There's no money exchanged in this transaction. This is, although we're not supposed to say a land swap, because in fact, towns can't swap land. What they can do is they can convey land out and they can accept land in, which is why you have two separate articles for those two functions. And in this case, the town owns about 15 acres behind the South School. Eric, the South School at the bottom of your screen, can you hover around that for a second? And between this backwards L-shaped red or pink strip and the green strip in between, that encompasses about 15 acres. And the Stefano family owns the parcel to the west that fronts on Sumner. They also own Fano Drive and lots along Fano Drive. So the agreement is that the town will convey that green parcel to the DeStefano family, and the DeStefano family will convey to the town Fano Drive and the three lots that are directly across Fano Drive from the school site. The acreage of both is approximately the same. I want to say about 8.6 acres. We're giving away at about 7.9 or 7.85. I think we're acquiring. It's approximately the same. The two parcels actually suffer some of the same obstacles for future development. They both have wetlands issues. The town parcel that we're conveying out has one additional obstacle, which is you'll notice the darker green that strip that divides that green parcel. That's an electrical easement. That was one of the things that we contended with when we were looking at sites for the new school. We looked at that parcel behind the South School. It has there's in addition to that easement that divides it approximately in half, it also has a grade differential of that 1 point. I think it's from the southeast corner to the northwest corner. There's a variance of about 50 feet in elevation, if I remember right. Plus there are wetlands at the northerly end of that 15-acre site. And that is also in a river protection zone. So that presented additional obstacles to development. And that river protection zone, it's riparian district, it's called. It actually encompasses both the three lots that we're acquiring and the 8.6 acres that we're conveying out. So when I say that both parcels are sort of afflicted with the same obstacles, that's part of it. But in this case, there is one party that could use the 15 acres more so than any other abutter, and that would be the DeStefano family. And in our case, Fano Drive would have been quite a benefit to the project. So it was a good deal altogether. And I have to compliment the town manager and Mark Tisdale, who put in yeoman effort to get this deal done, signed, and in place so that we could move forward. Because of course, MSBA has a very tight schedule that we had to meet. So that is the proposal. The green is being conveyed out. That's one article. And the pink area, the pink three lots and Fano Drive are being acquired by the town. And the town is retaining, I should say, that sort of backwards L-shaped strip that surrounds the green parcel. And that Mark Tisdale is here, but he'll tell you that was his idea, and it was to do a couple things. First of all, it was to maintain a buffer area for neighboring residents And also if the town ever needed access through that parcel for any reason, retaining rights seemed to be a wise thing to do. So it also made the land acquisition and the conveyance, the parcel sizes approximately equal. So next slide, Eric. Actually, I'm gonna kick this back to Carl if I can, some of which he hit on already, but this describes the changes in the roadway system that he was talking about earlier.
Sure, TJ. This really was kind of a diagram that summed up the pros and cons of this whole transaction in a sense. Because in addition to the expense of building those roadways and bridges, there's also the permitting complications. When you try to disrupt that much wetland and have that much coverage of pavement too on a site of this size, you get beyond just the local conservation commission or local planning board. We'd have to be in front of the state and go through a kind of a prolonged permitting process too to even get that original plan approved, which, we had confidence that it could be done, but it would have affected the schedule and perhaps even the budget. So by not having to pave those yellow areas, not having to build those roads, not having to include the bridges, we traded off, in essence, the yellow pavement for a little bit more of those orange connections to Fano Drive, because Fano was already paved to some extent. And so the amount of pavement, the amount of coverage went down. We could save more trees, less clearing was needed. So from an environmental point of view, it was definitely a plus. So it had, as we say, budget advantages, schedule advantages, financial advantages, and the permitting advantages too. And ultimately, you might say safety, not just for the school by having two ways in and out, but for the town eventually. This end of town will benefit ultimately when Fano Drive can be connected as a formal, public road for the entire extent of it from Park Street to Sumner. So all of those things, sort of tip the scales clearly in the favor of this transaction, and of course at no cost by being able to trade off, in essence, the land the town is giving up for the land they're acquiring. There's no financial impact. It seems like a great move.
Thanks, Carl. That might be it for the slides we have, I think, Eric. No. Great. So that's the concept, and we brushed on the changes to the project because we don't want to keep everybody up and rehash things. It's really a fairly simple deal. Makes sense if we can open it up to questions. Again, click the raise hand button at the top of your screen. Eric Rubin will recognize people in turn when you hear your name called. If you could just make sure that your mute button or that your microphone is not muted so that we can go right to you when you hear your name. Just click off mute and we'll direct you to the person who can answer. Anybody have any questions? Someone must.
And for anyone watching this at a later date, you can send any questions into the project email presented above. We'll try to get back to you some answers.
Great. Just last word, we'll hold it open for questions for another couple minutes. Just process-wise, this is how we're moving forward now. So we've been going forward with this incorporated into the plan. It still needs one final sign-off from MSBA, which we anticipate we'll get. But the primary obstacles right now are town meeting vote, after which we'll take care of the land transfers, and then we'll be off to the races. And there are a couple minor permitting steps in there. It was one planning board plan that needs to be approved that creates the new parcel, but otherwise, that's about it. I should point out, if town meeting does not approve the articles, we're back to the original plan. It doesn't mean that the project has been scuttled by any means. It might, of course, cause us to scramble a little bit to go back and reactivate the plan that we've sort of moved off of, but otherwise the project remains a go and full speed ahead. We'll just have to go back to the original road system and access that we had before, and of course the emergency access on Haynes Road. Why are we just making another call for any questions? If not, we'll
Kevin, maybe? You see,
yeah, I saw me.
just a thumbs up.
I saw thumbs up. Great. Well, if there are no questions, this will be one of the easier forms. I should also point out, we haven't scheduled yet, but we've discussed holding a more formal project forum sometime. Tim, were we talking November maybe? That will be a live event. The location we have yet to determine, and the date, of course, we have yet to determine, but we've held several over the course of the project prior to this date. So if you've been to any of them, it will be like that, or we'll summon everybody into maybe the high school or some forum where we can put on a presentation of the whole project and answer any other questions then. But we thought this was important to flesh out any questions from town meeting members primarily, but anybody from the public who wanted to know what's going on prior to the vote next week. So last call, if anybody has any questions, happy to answer them. If not, 3, on slide, 2, 1. Great. Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you to the project team, of course, for being here and being available. And Mark Tisdale, I see is here. Mark, you should, of course, take your well-deserved praise for putting this deal together so that we have these articles before us tonight, because I think Mark did all the heavy lifting on this. So got that. If you have any questions, Eric pointed out the contact information is on the screen before you. There's an email that you can send. Eric, why don't you run through the ways they can contact us before I get something wrong or don't do it justice?
Yep, you should be able to just type in the email above, the new elementary school at stoughtonschools.org. So. We also have a website you can go on. There's I think it's been updated pretty regularly now. So feel free to go on there if you have any other questions. So yep, you can use the QR code there to get to the website. Fantastic. Thank you all, and have a great night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.